this nutrition, kind of the last installment of the nutrition game plan. We've gone over kind of the definitions of nutrition, races, fueling during races versus just nutrition outside of racing and training. We've gone through eating properly during the nutrition side of things, just everyday eating. We've gone through what you need to be doing leading up to a race, the night before the race, the morning of the race. So now we're going to go actually into a deeper dive of my recommendations, what to do during a race. And I can't really be a dietitian or nutritionist, so I can't necessarily give you recommendations. B, this is going out to a couple of different kind of people. So not everybody has the same type of system, and they don't work the same. They don't do metabolize foods the same. They don't utilize foods the same. So it's a little bit more vague in general. If you have specific questions, you can send me an email. I'll work with some nutritionists and dietitians on the side. So if you have any questions, we can kind of get those answered. But we're going to go from more of a, not 10,000 foot, we're like 2,500 feet. So we're kind of going to go over some ideas and recommendations that I have for what you need to be doing during the race. And then it's kind of looking more at the 70.3 and 140.6. Anything shorter than that, the Olympic and a sprint, you don't need as much nutritional support during the race. You probably need a little bit during an Olympic, but typically when you're getting into the 70.3 and the 140.6, you're looking at this kind of standard setup. So typically, and we've gone over, like I said, the video series, check back and what you need to be doing. So we're going to pick up kind of the swim, what you'd be doing. So typically during the swim, you don't have an opportunity to refuel. Some races are 2 laps. So maybe if you came out of the water, you would be able to grab something, but you would have to grab it from somebody standing around, and you can't get outside support. And I would highly recommend not putting a lunch bag there at the come out of the water point and then rifle through and find something to eat. Some people take stuff on the swim and try to find a place to stop, stick it in your hand or something like that, but I don't recommend eating or drinking anything during the swim, especially don't drink the water, especially, I'm in Chattanooga, you're in the river there. If you're doing a 70.3 and it's in a body of water that's kind of questionable or anything like that, it's not a freshwater reservoir or something, I'd be a little leery. I wouldn't drink the water as a hydration strategy. But what you can do is you can, especially the 70.3 when you're doing the 1.2 mile swim, it's less of enough is typically 2 hours or something like that. So basically, if you're taking that long, it's a little bit of a problem, but generally, usually about an hour point, most people are out of the swim for a 70.3 race. 2.4 miles for the 140.6 mile race for a full Ironman. The cutoff's 220. So once you get to that point, you're kind of burning through what you've had for breakfast, and what you've had, what I recommend is 30 minutes before the swim starts, you get about 100 calories, which is kind of a goo gel, and some water to make sure you kind of wash that down, because without water, your system does not process food as well. So you want to make sure you got water in there to help the digestive system, especially when you're not standing upright, how your body normally functions. You want to make sure that you got some water in there to help kind of get it going, but you don't want so much food in there and so much water that sloshes around, especially when you're swimming. The last thing you want to do is have some heartburn or kind of burp and it kind of comes back up. It's gross, and you don't want to have to deal with it, especially in the swim. Like I said, there's very few opportunities to stop, get a drink of fresh water. You don't want to be drinking the river, the reservoir water wherever you're swimming. So make sure you got a little bit on board before that swim starts. Just so you can have that kind of, you've already started the glycogen upage there before the race even starts. So when you hit the bike, that's typically the next opportunity to get some water, some drinkable water, and to get the next intake of calories. A lot of people will do like a Goose sports gel. Like I said, just 100 calories, nothing too big, because you don't want to overload the system, especially when you're going swimming and you're laying parallel, floating around, and then you're going to be upright and you're going to jump on your bike and you're going to start increasing the energy requirement because you're pumping your legs, and those are large muscles, larger than your arms when you're swimming through. So you don't want a belly full of food, but like a goo gel will work great, a few little chomps, Pop-Tart bites, whatever you're going to, peanut butter jelly sandwich, whatever. Grab that in T1, get it down with some water, and then get your gear and hit the road. So when you're on the bike and when you're in that first half of the ride, you know, in 70.3 or 140.6, look at about 400 or 500 calories an hour, and that's kind of a lot. But what you're doing, you're setting yourself up, because as you go throughout the day, there's more and more requirements on your system to keep the legs moving, because you're swimming, you're biking, you're running, requiring blood, they're requiring oxygen, they're requiring everything. Your body is going to say, I don't need to process food right now, because what I need to do is keep the legs moving. So I'm going to take all the blood flow away from the stomach. I'm going to stop processing stuff. So towards the end of the race, you're going to be in a position where whatever's in your stomach is going to sit there. So beginning of the bike, you got the most energy coming out of the water. That's the time to kind of up the calorie increase. So you're spreading this 400 to 500 calories out per hour over the hour. You're not eating 400 calories in one, stop or snack or whatever. It's a peanut butter jelly sandwich. You eat it all. You need to make sure that you're spacing it out. So if it's goo gels, you're doing 2 or 3 an hour, or if it's if you're doing one package, 150 calories every 15, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. So it's just something you're constantly doing. So a lot of people, they complain about, I get bored of it. It's a long time, 56 miles, or 100 or 112 miles. That's a long time to be out there on the bike. It's kind of boring. You shouldn't be bored, because you're thinking about food. You're thinking about water. So every time you have food, you drink with water. Not a lot. You don't want sloshing going on, but you need to keep water in the system to keep that digestion going. And I count food and sports drinks. So if you got Tailwind, if you're using UCAN, if you're using Scratch, whatever you're using out there, that counts towards that 400 to 500 calories. So if you're doing nutrition, you're doing solid foods, and you got 500 calories, and you're doing sports drinks, even Gatorade Endurance, you're slopping that on top, you're getting like 700 calories. So you're getting to a point where, but that first half of the bike, that is your opportunity to get maybe a little bit overloaded. So you're setting yourself up for the rest of the day. You're getting that stuff, you're getting it in the system, you're letting your stomach do its job, digest that stuff, and get it in the intestines to start absorbing into the system. Because once you get to the second half of that bike ride, you kind of want to ramp it down, especially towards the last, for a 56-mile ride for a half Ironman, probably the last 6 to 7 miles, kind of you're ramping it down. The last 15 miles on a full Ironman, you're ramping that down to the low end of the range, counting the sports drink. And so when you're rolling into T2, you want to have kind of a downgrade of how much food you're putting in your stomach, because once you start the run, you're going to be on a decline of how much you can process. And trust me, I've been there. I visited a couple trash cans and porta potties in my day in full Ironman events, my 7 that I've completed. There's been a couple where I've had to make a pit stop, just because whatever you put in the stomach, it's just done. So once you get to the run and you find yourself at the point where you're severely thirsty and you're super hungry, and if you're trying, unless you're walking, I would highly not recommend in the run. It's not the time to catch up on food. If you've got to that point, you kind of screwed up the first half of the bike ride on setting up your nutrition for the run. So jumping ahead though, so that into that bike ride, you're kind of decreasing the amount of calories, because again, you're running your system into the ground. So after 112 miles, you've expended so much energy, you're still making those legs do all the work. Big muscles require all your body has to offer. So it's taking that support away from your stomach. It's saying, I don't need food right now. You can go 25 days without eating and be okay and survive. But you do need the last half of the ride, you're going to start ramping it down. So when you come into the T2, this is probably one of your final opportunities, especially if you're sitting there in the chair and you're doing your transition. First thing, put it on top of your pile in your T2 bag is the goo or whatever you're going to do, peanut butter jelly sandwich, whatever, something kind of small, take it with water. They should have cups there in the transition tent. Eat it, take that, do it first before you start changing everything. That way you give your body a little bit of time to let it settle, because once you start that run, everybody tends to start out a little bit stronger than they were going to in the race. Full, you're sloshing around, it's going to set you up for a bad situation on the run. So T2, get a little bit before you change your gear. Then, especially like at the half Ironman distance, like Des Moines 70.3, you're going to set your transition up like you typically would at normal races. It's all going to be outside, so make sure you put that stuff at the top of your bag or out somewhere. You know, if it's going to be hot, it's going to be cold, whatever. Make sure you take that into consideration. If it's going to be hot, it's not stuff you want out there that's going to melt potentially. Because if you said whatever, or kind of stick it in your running shoes or whatever, that's the time to grab it, eat it, and then switch all your gear out. When you hit that run, first, probably I put half, but that first third is really the only opportunity you're going to get any kind of extra calories in there. Personally, I tend to go a little bit more with fluids to get my calories from rather than solid foods. So I'll switch more to the Gatorade Endurance on the course. Might switch to Red Bull at that point. Something to give you that glycogen store. And once you start like Red Bull or you start Coke or something like that, you got to do it the entire way. But typically, this is where I try to get any calories I can, because once you get to that second half, once you hit 13, 14 miles, your body at that point is saying, I'm sorry, there was a spider running around during my presentation. You can't have that. No. So if I jump around crazy, run around screaming like a little girl, you'll know why. Little spider hanging out. Anyway, back to the talk. So the run, so once you get to that second half, your body is pretty much, even when I pushed the effort, like at 70.3 Muncie, it was warm, it was hot. So if you got a warm race, especially, then it's going to be difficult for your body to process foods. I pretty much knew it was an out and back. So once I hit coming back, I knew I was at a point where I couldn't take much more. I tried to sip water where I could at the aid station, tried to sip a little bit of Gatorade, just enough to try to give me aid station, get to that finish line. I was able to do it in about 140 something. So that entire run, I was able to run, but I knew if I put food in my body past the halfway bar, anything, it was going to be done, because I was going to have GI distress, bloated stomach, walk around, not processing food, it's going to feel uncomfortable. But I still finished the race. The problem was not the fact that I was malnourished or starved by the end of it. The fact was, I've reached the limits of my muscular endurance for that race, trained up for 7.3. So the key is to get into that bike, make sure you're loaded up. Second half of the bike, you're staying consistent. The first half of the run, do what you can, especially the 70.3. Once you get to that 6, 7, 8 mile mark, kind of cut it off. You need to switch to fluids. Can you not take anything at that point? Sometimes if it's hot, I'll go to just swishing water, swishing Gatorade in my mouth, and spitting it out. Because if I take too much in, the stomach's just like, no, I'm done. I'm not sending anything else. I'm just going to sit there and it's going to slosh around and make you feel uncomfortable. So make sure that you're listening to your body. And in your training, that's a good time too. When you're doing your tempo work, you're doing your zone 3 work, make sure you're working on putting nutrition in and seeing how your body reacts. The long rides, the long runs, you're not doing them outside of what you think you would do during a race, because that's where you train your body to take it, and that's where you figure out what works and what doesn't work. The stuff on the course, goos and bars and all that kind of stuff, that's a swim. Usually the first half of the bike, goos, bars, gels, chomps, chews, whatever, I'm done. I can probably do bananas, but at that point, I'm more like peanut butter jelly sandwich, Pop-Tart bites, like I've mentioned before. I do UCAN in my drink, mixed with Gatorade. I do Gatorade Endurance on the course, as long as it's cold. Once it starts getting, if that drink's warm, it's done. So know in training what you can do on race day and have a good idea of where you want to be at and map it out. Mile 0, 400, 500 calories. Map out. I want to do goos. I want to do chomps. And I want to do Gatorade Endurance on the course. Or if you're doing the 140.6, up to mile 50, this is what I'm doing. Or mile 70, you want to kind of push it to mile 70. It's like, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I want to eat. You need to have that schedule in mind before you hit the race. This needs to be weeks before the race. Figure out what you're going to take at what point per hour, because that bike ride, 112 miles, will go by pretty quick. And if you've gone through and you're like, oh, crud, I only drank like 2 Gatorades and I only had once you start to run, you're going to be in a deficit nutrition-wise, glycogen stores to get you through that run. You're going to play catch up the entire run, and basically you're going to run yourself into the ground. So you've got to adjust your plan. But have a plan and stick to your plan for nutrition when you're doing your races. Again, this is more like the 2,500 foot level. So it's not, I can't exactly say do 2 goos, 3 gels, and a sports drink with scratch, 2 milliliters, this mixture, whatever, because that's more individualized for the person and what kind of works for you. But if you do have questions, you can always email me back, reply to the videos, put comments on there, send me an email. I'd love to answer your questions, help you out any way I can.